going to talk about a couple quotes in A Long Way Gone, and you are going to analyze those quotes. So I first want you to watch this short little video about the theme of hope and Ishmael Bea's story. So follow along here, and then we'll talk about your assignment afterwards. So stay with me.
Being a child in war, it's difficult, and I had no desire to really survive because I'd lost everything. My name is Ishmael Bea. I am an author, and I'm also a human rights activist. By age 13, I had been recruited into the army, and I was fighting as a soldier. When the war finally came to my part of the country, I was 12 years old, and I started running from it. I lost everything, my immediate family was killed in the war, so my mother, father, and two brothers. You learned to function in madness very quickly. You have to adapt to your situation in order to survive. And often you're exposed to extreme levels of violence that you've never even heard of. There was a lot of hardship. We had lots of arms and ammunition, but no food, no medicine, and lots of drugs. But also when you've lost family and everything, you quickly learn to belong to this group. But to belong to this new group required violence. Violence became the way to show loyalty. There were several things that gave me hope. One of them was when I was a boy, my father used to say to me, if you're alive, there's a possibility that something good would happen to you. That if none of those possibilities exist in your life anymore, you will die. And while we had gone on one of these missions, there were a few people who showed up. And I vividly remember them wearing this thing that says UNICEF on it and the logo of this person with this baby. And I remember thinking to myself the first time that maybe they're like a new mercenary group that we're gonna like collaborate with, because I never heard of UNICEF. So they had some talk with the commander, and then at some point they lined everybody up, and then they would disarm us, and they took my weapon. I was not happy. I was actually very upset, because I knew what that meant, not to have a weapon in the context that I was in. And then they put us in this vehicle and said, we're going to recover from the war and become a child again. They brought us to a place called Approved School, which became the center that I spent 8 months there recovering from the war. It's because of that intervention that took me out of that situation and made other things possible. After I came out of this experience of being a child in war, and I thought to myself, what can I do to give back? What can I do to have people understand the possibilities on the other end, how you can recover from all of that when you're given the right care and support. So I decided to be an example for both people coming out of the struggle, but also people who are doing that work to assist people coming out of that struggle. It's not often you come out of a situation, you meet somebody who has come out of a similar situation like you, and it's doing well and it's standing there. So it gives you hope that you too can do something with yourself. For every child, hope.
Okay, so this week, one of your assignments is going to be to look at 4 different quotes from the novel, and your job will be to analyze those quotes. I have done the first one for you because I wanted you to get an idea of exactly how to do that. If you were in class with me last week, then you actually saw this. We did this in class together. So I'm coming back up, sorry. Okay, so the first one was, we must strive to be like the moon. And this quote is found at the end of chapter 1. It's actually found on like the last 2 pages of chapter 1. So the first thing that I ask you to do is for you to figure out who said it. And if you read into the chapter, then you'll find that the one who said it was actually the old man from Gabati, Ishmael's grandmother's village. He used to say this. He would sit on his veranda or porch, and he would say this to people that came by. And Ishmael remembers this when he's thinking about the happy events from his childhood. Now, what's happening in the story when Ishmael includes this quote is important. So what has happened so far is that Ishmael, his brother Junior, and their friends had left their hometown of Machujong and traveled to Gadi on their way to a singing or rap competition. Their home village got attacked by the rebels while they were away. The boys have no way of knowing if their families are alive, and they're struggling with fear and anxiety as they wait to see if their family members arrive in Kabadi. While they are waiting on their family members to arrive, all of these people that have been impacted by the rebel attack, they start coming into Matrajong, and they see people that have been shot. They see people that are like one woman is carrying a dead baby on her back, and one man is carrying his son who is dead, and he's saying, if I can just get you to the hospital, you're going to be fine. And the boys are impacted by all of this trauma and violence that they are accosted with. So while this is going on, they have no way of knowing if their family members are alive, and they're struggling as they wait to see if they're coming. I said that already. They try to focus on learning the lyrics to the songs that they know. Their favorite music is rap music, like you know that already. Sorry. But they do this to take their minds off the constant fear of the unknown. And Ishmael tries to focus on happier times from his childhood before this traumatic experience began, which is where the quote comes in. So what did the speaker mean by the quote? Well, Ishmael's grandmother explains this adage. It says in the text that it's an adage, and that just basically means that it's a saying that people use. And it's actually a simile because it says we must strive to be like the moon. So you're being compared to the moon, or your behavior is being compared to the moon. But it means that the moon doesn't complain. People are always happy when they see the moon. The moon is kind, it's a source of happiness for others. When the old man says, we should be like the moon. He's saying that people should try to find happiness and hope in all circumstances and lift each other up, be kind to one another, and not complain about present circumstances. So, why is that important? Well, Ishmael Bey thought it was important enough to include in his memoir. And you need to always remember that when an author includes something in their story, there is a purpose for it. They don't just write random thoughts down and put them in the book and say, oh, yeah, maybe I'll put this in. They put them in for a reason. And so the reason that he includes this, that's the question that you're going to have to answer. At this specific time in Ishmael's life, it was traumatic. Everything was unknown. Was his family okay? Were the rebels going to come and attack Kabadi, his grandmother's village where they were? What was going to happen next? Would he ever see his loved ones again? Would life ever be the same? Like everything has been turned upside down, and he has no way of knowing any of these answers. So Ishmael includes this quote because as he's living this very moment, remembering a time before the world got turned upside down, it brought him relief from the fears that he's dealing with. Thinking of the moon, this thing that the old man, okay, let me go up a little bit, sorry. I'm right here. Thinking of the moon, this thing that the old man used to say about the moon, and knowing that the moon is a constant in his life helped him to find comfort in knowing that there was hope, that there is hope. So a lot of people would not be able to survive this circumstance. In a lot of interviews that I've seen Ishmael give, he talks about being smart is what gets people through war. Well, being smart includes figuring out how to keep yourself going mentally and physically. And so, one way that he does that is finding hope and thinking on good things when everything else seems to be falling apart, like this story of the moon. So, he says, okay, so everything else was traumatic and scary, but the moon continued to bring peace and happiness to all who looked at it. That's what Ishmael was trying to do at that moment. And he shares it as a way of showing how he was getting through the situation. Okay, so the next thing that you have to do is identify the theme that it would relate to in the novel. Well, I have given you a cheat sheet on the themes. Okay, so let's look at them right here. So you could pick anything that you want, but these are some themes that are definitely in the novel. If you can't think of one, I listed some for you. So you've got dangers of war, companionship, loss of identity, loss of family, loss of innocence, self-discovery, survival, hope, nature, children and war, responsibility. You could go on. You could make other things applicable too, but those are just some good ones to go with. So for that question, here's what you would do. It says, identify the theme that it would relate to in the novel, and how does this quote relate to this theme? So you can't just say the theme is hope. You have to explain how that theme fits into the novel and how that quote relates to that theme. So, Ishmael's story is a story of fear, war, conflict, loss of innocence, danger, guilt, and you can just kind of borrow some things from the theme list if you need to for that. It's also a story of hope. While he shares his experience of losing his entire family, being forced to become a child soldier and commit violence against other humans, he also tells us that he survived this trauma and came out on the other side of this experience, and he was able to find a fulfilling life. He uses this quote, that we should be like the moon, to help us, the reader, understand how he never lost hope no matter how desperate his circumstances became, and how he was able to use his happy childhood experiences to guide him through the war. So he uses that quote as an example of what he would do in really uh, trying times. Like when he was in a really tough situation, he would try to think of good things to get him through it. And this is an example of how he did that. So some of this I know I just read to you, but I wanted you to have an idea of how you should actually answer these questions. So if you see, I mean, it took me a whole page almost to answer those questions, and you might be able to do it in 2 or 3 sentences. The first one, it's okay if you just answer with the name of the person, but the rest of them, you should have 2 to 5 sentences to explain what's going on in them. Now, my sentences are really kind of long, but if you look at it, I've got like 1, 2, 3, 5 sentences right here. So, but that the reason that I'm asking you to do that is because you need to be thorough, and you need to cover specifics about the book. You do not need to put something like on identify the theme. You don't need to put the theme is hope because he wants everybody to be hopeful or to remain hopeful. No, you need to be more specific than that. And so I've given you examples of how you can do that, which I hope you will help you. So the next 3 quotes are on the second page and the third page, and I've told you where to find the quote. So you just have to go to the chapter and look for the quote, and then I've given you the same questions that I did on the first quote. So you just need to do something similar, and my answers are there for you to look at. So I hope this has helped, and you can get a better idea of what you're doing on this assignment. And let me know if you have any questions.